Senator Whitehouse opens this exchange with a simple, factual question: what happened to $50,000 in cash that the FBI allegedly handed over to a man named Homan in a paper bag? It's the kind of question that should have a clear answer. Either the FBI recovered the money, or Homan kept it, or something else happened to it. Instead, Attorney General Pam Bondi immediately pivots to a rehearsed talking point. The investigation was reviewed, multiple agents and prosecutors found no wrongdoing.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Bondi, good morning.
Good morning.
What became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI paid to Mr. Homan in a paper bag, evidently?
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
And that was not my question. My question was, what became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI delivered, evidently in a paper bag, to Mr. Homan?
Senator, I'd look at your facts.
Are you saying that they did not deliver $50,000 in cash to Mr. Homan?
Senator, as recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI agents, by Department of Justice prosecutors. They found no evidence of wrongdoing.
That's a different question. What became of the $50,000? Did the FBI get it back?
Mr. Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to talk to the FBI.
The report to you, can't you answer this question?
Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to discuss this with Director Patel.
Did Homan keep the $50,000?
As Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan
I can see I'm not going to get a straight answer from you to a very simple question.
By the FBI agents and the DOJ. They found no credible evidence of wrongdoing. You know, you're very concerned about money and people taking money, and you rail against dark money.
Wait a second.
You work with dark money groups all the time, Senator Whitehouse.
Did you know whether or not in that investigation they looked at whether the $50,000 payment to Mr. Homan was declared by him on his tax returns?
Senator, I would be more concerned if I were you when you talk about corruption and money that when you pushed for legislation that would subsidize your wife's company.
The questions here are actually pretty specific. So having you respond with completely irrelevant far-right internet talking points really is not very helpful here. I'd like, Mr. Chairman, you generally like to have us be able to get answers to know, and we'll follow up with the QFR. And to the extent Patel wants to answer, that would be great as well. What happened to the $50,000? Did Homan keep it? Did the FBI get it back? If he kept it, did he put it on his tax returns? Pretty simple questions. Homan was the same guy who said there was a deal with Eric Adams. He said, if Adams doesn't come through, I'll be back. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? Which brings us to the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee, because he was also involved in that transaction. Yeah. What became of the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee?
Yeah, Senator Whitehouse, to correct you for one moment, that would be the Honorable Judge Emil J. Bovee III to you.
Not at the time of this. He was an employee of the Department of Justice. And what became of the OPR investigation?
It's all pending litigation, Senator. I can't discuss pending litigation nor personnel matters.
OPR customarily publicly says when there's an investigation, and at the end of it, they provide a summary. Why can't you say whether there's an OPR investigation and whether, if it's concluded, there's a summary?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters.
Even public ones?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters.
So, Kash Patel told this committee that his grand jury testimony after immunization, after initially pleading the Fifth, was, and I quote, sealed by the Department of Justice. How and when and why was his testimony sealed, and by whom?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss any testimony, especially testimony that could be sealed, with you.
No, the question is, was it or was it not sealed?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss that with you.
Well, he also said that he worked with the Department of Justice to have his transcript released publicly. How and when was his transcript released? Presumably, if he released it publicly, that's something you can discuss because it's public.
Well, Senator, I believe you discussed that with Director Patel.
And I'm asking you because he said the Department of Justice made this decision and you run the Department of Justice.
I would refer that to Director Patel.
Even though you run the Department of Justice and he testified that the Department of Justice released his transcript publicly.
If it is released publicly, we will get you a copy, Senator, gladly.
If being a rather important word there, when your FBI director testified that that was a fact. Treasury compiles suspicious activity reports, referred to often as SARs, that DOJ receives automatically. Hundreds related to accounts of Jeffrey Epstein. How many of those Treasury SARs did you or Director Patel investigate?
Senator, I'm not sure if you're concerned because you took money, I believe, did you, from Reid Hoffman, one of Epstein's closest confidants, not only once but twice in 2018 and 2024, if that's correct. But, Senator, did you ask Merrick Garland any of this over the last 4 years when he sat before you? This investigation has been going on. This investigation was closed. Did you ask Alex Acosta that?
And Patel came to office, you said you would look into this. There were hundreds of suspicious activity reports. Some people would deduce from the fact that they are called suspicious activity reports that there might be suspicious activity. And yet you seem to have looked at 0 of those suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein accounts. Let me ask you something else. There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right, when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released. Yet you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that? Okay. Here's what well, no, we cut to something else. The Marshal Service is supposed to protect our federal judges. I have asked repeatedly for the Marshal Service to let me know if they are investigating or being inhibited from investigating whether or not there is orchestration of threats against federal judges, whether under either conspiracy laws or racketeering enterprise laws or aiding and abetting laws, whatever. But as you know, there's the person who says the threat, and then there may very well be somebody orchestrating the threat behind them. Mm-hmm. Is the Marshal Service allowed to investigate orchestration of threats, and do you know if they've taken one step to do so?
May I answer the question, Chairman Grassley? The time has expired.
I think it's the convention of the committee that if I've started my question in my time, you may answer the question.
I was asking the chairman.
Okay, before I go to Cornyn.
She wants to answer the question, Chairman.
Oh, please go ahead. I thought you said you didn't want to answer it.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse, I would be happy to sit down with you regarding any threat to any federal judge in this country. We take threats very seriously. I will set a meeting with you, with Director Seralta of the U.S. Marshals, and I will be there. And we will talk about any threats on federal judges.
Including
who
orchestration.
threatened them or who orchestrated them.
Bingo. Thank you.
But that statement never addresses the actual question. Whitehouse repeats it, narrowing it down to the fate of the money itself, and still Bondi refuses to confirm even the basic facts. The lack of specificity isn't accidental. It's a classic tactic used when the answer is either embarrassing, legally sensitive, or politically inconvenient. The significance here is not the dollar amount. $50,000 is not the story. What matters is accountability. When law enforcement hands over cash to a cooperating witness or informant, there are strict protocols. Accounting for those funds is a baseline requirement. Whitehouse isn't digging for trivia. He's probing whether the Justice Department under Bondi is following standard operating procedures or concealing something uncomfortable about the nature of the relationship with Homan, a figure tied to allegations involving public officials. Bondi's deflection intensifies when she shifts the conversation away from the fact and toward an attack on Whitehouse personally, accusing him of hypocrisy and dark money associations. This is a deliberate strategy. Instead of answering oversight questions, she reframes the exchange as partisan conflict. But Whitehouse stays anchored to his point. He asks again, did Homan keep the money? Did he declare it on his taxes? These are measurable, documentable questions. Bondi refuses again, citing the ability of Whitehouse to talk to the FBI, despite the fact that she is the one who oversees the department. That contradiction alone tells us something. Bondi is intentionally creating distance between herself and the facts. From there, the conversation moves into even deeper territory. Whitehouse raises an Office of Professional Responsibility into an official named Bovee, who was involved in the alleged deal-making surrounding Homan. Bondi again refuses to answer, invoking pending litigation and personnel matters. But it's important for viewers to understand, OPR investigations are often publicly acknowledged. Saying whether one exists is usually not considered confidential. Bondi's refusal here is not about privacy. It's about avoiding anything that could confirm internal misconduct or mishandled investigations. Whitehouse then shifts to a question about the sealing of testimony from Kash Patel, a key figure who had been immunized before speaking to a grand jury. Patel himself testified that his cooperation was sealed by the Department of Justice. Whitehouse simply asks how, when, and by whom that decision was made. Bondi refuses once more. The public deserves to know when testimony is sealed because sealing affects transparency, accountability, and the public record. A sealed transcript can protect witnesses or investigations, but it can also hide politically advantageous details. Bondi's refusal here is not about privacy. It's about avoiding anything that could confirm internal misconduct or mishandled investigations. Whitehouse then shifts to a question about the sealing of testimony from Kash Patel, a key figure who had been immunized before speaking to a grand jury. Patel himself testified that his cooperation was sealed by the Department of Justice. Whitehouse simply asks how, when, and by whom that decision was made. Bondi refuses once more. The public deserves to know when testimony is sealed because sealing affects transparency, accountability, and the public record. A sealed transcript can protect witnesses or investigations, but it can also hide politically advantageous details. Bondi's unwillingness to clarify suggests that even the procedural explanation might reveal something uncomfortable about the department's decision-making under her leadership. Whitehouse also raises a larger pattern, the DOJ's lack of engagement with the hundreds of suspicious activity reports involving Jeffrey Epstein's financial dealings. These reports are automatically generated when banks detect potential criminal activity. Ignoring them is not normal, it's not routine, and it's not something that happens by accident. If the DOJ under Bondi and Patel truly looked at zero of them, as Whitehouse implies, that signals a massive collapse of investigative priorities, or an intentional decision to avoid certain politically sensitive leads. Bondi responds not with evidence, but with attempts to discredit the question by associating Whitehouse with donors connected to Epstein. The exchange ends with a final question about threats against federal judges. Here, Bondi abruptly shifts tone. Perhaps because this issue, protecting judges, is politically safer ground, she suddenly becomes cooperative, offering to meet privately and involve the U.S. Marshal Service. The contrast is stark. When the topic involves accountability for Trump allies, internal DOJ conduct, or politically sensitive investigations, she shuts down. When the topic is external threats that don't implicate her department's decisions, she opens up. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below about which part of this hearing stood out to you most. It helps amplify this content and keeps these complex issues accessible to more people.